Hello weirdos, welcome back to my channel. My name is EmmaAbe and we have a little special guest that I need to remove the collar of so I don't dox myself. Anyway, we have the baby. Look at her, she's so cute. Aren't you so cute? What are you helping me with today? Well, that was so cute. What are you helping me with today? Well, today we are going to be talking about all of the books that I read in the month of June. And June, I'm not gonna lie, was really hard for many reasons. I'm going through a lot of personal stuff that I might get to later in this video. But also, just the stuff in the news is really hard. And so what did I do? I just threw myself into reading books. And as a result of that, I read 16 books this month. I think it's the most books that I've read in a single month this year because holy shit, it was either that or go on social media and be very depressed. So, anyway, let's get into it. So the first book that I read is Empire of Pain, A Secret History. This is by Patrick Rodden Keefe. So he wrote Say Nothing, which I have somewhere else on my shelves, and I really enjoyed this. I mean, it's kind of hard to enjoy something like this, but this tells the story of the Sackler family and their push to make Oxycontin the #1 drug in America. And because of their push of this drug, a lot of people got addicted, and it kind of tells of how people that the Sacklers knew, and they would rather people be addicted than do anything about it. It's really fucked up, and it's really an interesting piece of journalism that came out last year. Yeah, and it's a very dark story. I didn't realize how many things were like funded by like the Sacklers, like the whole Egyptian wing in the Met was all funded by them, and it's there because of them. I was reading this actually for, like, I just finished it when I had, like, the interview for the job I have, and I'm not going to say, like, where in my job because I would like to have a little bit of anonymity in my life. But, like, the job, the place I'm working is very prestigious, like, boarding school where a lot of people who have, like, a butt ton of money, like the Sacklers, will go. And so while I was reading it and I was reading about like the garbage people that are the Sacklers, I'm like, what can I do as a teacher, as an educator, to make sure that my kids who may come from this level of privilege do not turn out like this? Like that whole thing was just running through my mind on what I have to do as an educator to check my students when I'm hearing them say things that they shouldn't be saying. But I really enjoyed this, and it's definitely a well worth read. I could say another thing about this book, but I won't, because that's a surefire way to dox myself. But anyway, while I was on the interview, I found a connection between myself and the author based off of my workplace, and I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. And I called one of my best friends, and who also really enjoyed Patrick Rodden Keefe's work, and I was like, guess what, and I told her this thing, and she was like, oh my god, that's wild. Because it is wild. Anyway, sorry to be so cagey, but again, I want to preserve my anonymity on the internet despite making these videos. Continuing on to the next book that I read, which is The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea by Xie Oh. This one I felt was like a little bit underwhelming. You know, I still enjoyed it. I still liked it. I guess I just thought it was going to be like I was just expecting a little bit more out of this. I don't know if I was super distracted reading it at the time because I had 10 bazillion job interviews and just searching for jobs. That was just very taxing emotionally. So I wasn't really being gripped by the story, and that like didn't help. You are hearing the story about this young girl who grew up in a village where every single year they sacrifice a young woman to be the sea god's wife. And her brother's fiance, aka the girl that her brother loves, is chosen to be the sacrifice, and her brother kind of is not willing to go with that. So he chases after his, girlfriend, fiance, person, lover, and like doesn't want her to be thrown beneath the sea. And the main character, loving her brother as much as she does, goes to protect him. And in order to protect him from getting hurt, she throws herself into the river and sacrifices herself to be the sea god's bride in place of her brother's lover. So I thought that premise was interesting. There's just a lot of moving parts in this that I wasn't paying as much attention as I should have. And it got to a point where I was like, do I start this book over or do I not? And I decided to not. But I do like a lot of the reveals that happen, like the reveals with the main character's traveling companions when she is in this like underworld place. I thought that was really interesting. I liked the whole red string of fate and how that works, and I did like the ultimate reveal at the end about who exactly the sea god was. I found that all to be very interesting and well worthwhile. It just did not grip me the way I wanted it to, but that being said, I probably would pick up another book by this author in the future. You are my baby, right? Yeah, she knows. She knows. The next book that I read is How the World... She left, bitch. Fine. The next book that I read is How the World is Past. This is a reckoning with the history of slavery across America. This is by Clint Smith. And I cannot talk about my feelings about this because this book is in the running for the BookTube prize, and we are only halfway through the round, so I cannot tell you my feelings. And I read a bunch of BookTube prize books this month. The next book that I read is Winter's Orbit. This is by Everina Maxwell, and I love this. I thought this was so cute. I am here for an arranged marriage situation. I am here for it. I'm here for the two idiots that they are being idiots. I was just here for the whole thing. Like, so what is this about? So this young prince, his name is Kim, he has to marry this duke of another planet named Jinan. And Jinan was married to Prince Kim's cousin, but the cousin has died recently. And in order to sustain the treaty between the two nations, between the two planets, Kim has to marry a Jinan. And at first, Kim is just very sensitive to the fact that Jinan is in mourning, just kind of pulls back away from Jinan because he wants to preserve those feelings. And Jinan is in a really awkward position because he has been controlled by his partner's family for so long, and so when he meets Kian is being so standoffish. He thinks it's going to be a repeat of his previous relationship, and kind of the isolation that he feels internally but also externally will continue, and that's not necessarily the case. But both of them are both very attracted to each other by the beginning, but their own misconceptions that I just kind of describes leads to a lot of this happening to where they're not meeting up and not touching base by their feelings until they go on this investigation to figure out exactly what happened to Jinan's previous partner, what is all the shady stuff going on, and they're trapped on a mountainside to where they really start opening up their feelings, and I was fucking here for it. It took a while to get to that point. Hang in with it, stick with it. But one thing I do like is that it does alternate perspectives, and you do get to hear the internal voices of both of our characters being fucking dumbasses. Anyway, but I really liked it. I'm just very happy that I read this. Okay, anyway, continuing on to the next book, which is Somebody's Daughter. This is by Ashley C. Ford, and this is another book that is in the running for the BookTube prize. So I can say zip, zero, and zilch. Okay. Next book is The Great Believers by Rebecca Malachi. This is fucking depressing. I don't know why I thought a book about AIDS in Chicago would be a good book to read, but it's depressing. So I picked this up on a recommendation from my professor because of just how Difference is written, but also it's a queer story. And then I read it because it was June and the Queer Lit Readathon was happening. So exciting. Then I read it and I'm like, God damn it, this is just depressing. So what is this about? This is about a group of men. Well, it's about two stories. So the first story is about this group of men living in Chicago. They are all gay, and guess what? They're dropping like flies because of AIDS. And they're each kind of like differing, dealing with it in a different way. We are following this one man in particular who is dealing with kind of a overbearing partner who's older than him and is watching all of his friends die, but at the same time he's trying to open this art exhibition, and that's labor of love from one of the artist's ex-lovers. It's just a really interesting introspection, and you just watch this man slowly die, essentially. And the other part of the story is Fiona, who is basically friends with all of these people, all of these people in New York who are dying, or not in New York, in Chicago, who are dying, and she's gone to France to try and find her daughter, who her daughter joined a cult and then had a baby, and so she's trying to find her daughter, meet her new grandbaby, and all of this. In France, she reunites with a lot of things from her past, from these people in Chicago, and it brings up a lot of emotions, and it's just very tangled up and messy and like that, and it was just depressing, which is sad, but it was really, really well written. I definitely will be reading more Rebecca Malkai in the future. Very sad, very, very sad, but very, very good. So just know, I read one review on like Goodreads that was like, I had to DNF, but it was a 5-star, and he was just like, I DNF'd it because it was a 5-star, but I lost my love, my first love, my one and only love, the love of my life during the AIDS crisis, and it was just too hard to relive those feelings, which, holy fuck, yeah, I don't even know how I would feel going through the AIDS crisis, because that definitely would be my experience. My friends would be dropping left and right, and that would be really, really hard to deal with. But luckily, AIDS is still around, but there are medicines and ways to deal with it now. So anyway, that's this one. Anyway, the next book that I picked up, that I read this month, is Heaven's Official's Blessing, Volume 2. So this continues off of the same stuff from the first volume. You have established that Hua Chang is Hua Chang and he's Song Lan. So we know that these two are the same people. We have this wrinkle kind of thrown in the mix of this like 10-year-old child who is very, very clinging to Xielan, who's this dude, and the 10-year-old child's in his arms. I don't know how to necessarily feel about this book, because once we had the introduction of like this child and more of the child was in play, it picked up a lot, but I think for a while it was just kind of dragging. I don't know if it's just a part in the book, the whole Heaven's Official Blessing, that is a little bit slow. I'm gonna continue because it is MXTX and it's Heaven's Official Blessing. It's like the second most popular book of hers, but I don't know, this book kind of felt a little bit slow. I am excited for, in the month of July, getting the third book, so it's all coming. It's very exciting. I'm very excited. But yeah, I just kind of felt like, how do I feel about this? And it's really hard to talk about it. There were some very iconic scenes, like the whole gambling scene that I've been seeing bombarded on my Twitter, the whole gambling scene, and I got to see that, and that was pretty nice. I just kind of love that Shaylan's really stupid and doesn't understand when flirting is flirting. These men just need to fucking get it together, honestly. Anyway, continuing on to the next book, which is Siege and Storm. This is by Leigh Bardugo. This is the second book in kind of like the whole, I guess, Grishaverse thing. I don't really know how you call it. And I didn't really like this book that much. I didn't hate it. I just didn't really find it very compelling. I liked the addition of the character of Nikolai. I thought that he was very interesting, and I love the back and forth that he has with the main character. I just kind of was sitting there like, what is the point? They found their like MacGuffin, the thing that they're trying to find very quickly. The rest is just kind of a lot of political maneuvering, I guess. I don't know. I'm really not a huge fan of just the arguments that Alina and Mal have. I am not on that bandwagon. I like them together as a couple. I don't like this bullshit that they're just going back and forth being like, I want to be with you, but like, I'm too powerful. And I'm just like, oh my god, shut the fuck up. Like, just break up already, or like get together. Stop. And then they're both kind of terrible together because like, or they're both kind of terrible towards each other in this book because he like cheats on her, and then she just is like constantly pushing him away and is really hungry for power. And I'm like, girl, if you want power, just like acknowledge that and like seize the day, which is what she's doing more in like the third book, which is what I'm reading right now. Yeah, it was really maybe not like a bad entry. It was a weaker of the two that I've read so far, and I'm not loving this series the way that a lot of people are loving this series. Who really knows? I was really kind of jazzed to get into it, to read it, and it's just not working out for me. And if I didn't have to read the like fifth book in like the third series in this whole Grishaverse, I probably would stop. I probably would not be reading the third book. That's kind of how I feel about that book. It's just meh, not my favorite, but you know, it's doing its job, I guess. Anyway, next book that I read is Little Devil in America. This is by Huntif Abdrag. Tried. Really cannot decode anything. Nothing. But this is another book for the BookTube prize, so I can't talk about that one either. The video for that is going to be coming out at the end of June / early August, so please keep your eyes peeled because you will be seeing that. The next book that I read is The Romanoff Sisters, and I found this book to be very important. I'm sorry, my dog's just like half falling asleep in the corner of my bed. It's very distracting. She's very distracting. Anyway, The Romanoff Sisters, it's the lost lives of the daughters of Nicholas and Alexandria, and I really like how, I just found it very, very informative. I understand why it is such a popular book for nonfiction. I find just the Romanoff story to be very interesting, and it was very nice to kind of take a look at all of these sisters individually and look at their differences and look at them more, because a lot of times they're just kind of lumped together in the story, or if they're lumped together, then Anastasia is the only one that is really talked about anywhere else because of the whole rumors of Anastasia surviving, which I just do not think is possible. But it was just really interesting to hear their relationships with their rest of their family, but also like with their guards, and how isolated it was and how weird and stormy of a time it was, especially towards the end. I enjoyed it. Very, very solid book. I'd recommend it to people who want to know more about the Romanoffs and want that specific perspective of learning more about the four daughters, especially. It's very, very thorough. It's very long, but I was not bored. I will say that. I was not bored. Moving on to probably one of the best books that I probably read this entire month, and that is Genderqueer. This is by Maya Kenobi, and I read this and I fucking had a crisis. I read this because in my hometown, where mom's on the school board, there are some very homophobic people who, basically, the drama around this book was a teacher, a 6th grade teacher, sent out an email to the parents that had links to different like book lists, like the Lincoln Awards and some other awards, and was like, hey, here are some books ideas for your kids over the summer. And mind you, these are links to just book award lists that are for, you know, audiences. And she's like, hey, some of these books might be a little bit mature, but you know, it's your discretion from what you would like your kids to read. So, you know, this is stuff like the Hugo Awards, you know, like basically, anyway, the teacher did not curate a book list. It was a link to like the Lincoln Awards, basically. Some of the parents saw that this book, Genderqueer, was on the list and went on a fucking tirade about the fact that this book is pornography, that there are 4 pages in like literally over 300, like 350, that are remotely dealing with anything related to sex. 4, maybe, like, if you could say that. And so that they're railing at the school board for this book to be removed from the library and to be censored, which is fucking ridiculous. Anyway, but my mom has gotten a lot of just gotten a lot of hate. She's been called a pedophile on multiple times, which is like not okay. And it's really kind of put me off from working in the school district, honestly, because I don't feel like I would be safe in that environment. They're actively calling a book like this, which I really, really connected to, and I really love it, to be, yeah, it just proved that my hometown is a very hostile environment for someone like me. I don't think that I would be safe teaching in the school district, and it's nothing like a lot of the older school districts where there is no, like, don't say gay bills or anything where I'm from. But it's just, this book has kind of proven the hostility of a lot of the community members, people that I've grown up with, which is really disheartening to hear, and makes me really glad that I took a job in Boston. That I read this and I had crisis because I felt so seen by this book. A lot of what the author talks about going through her journey, it just really, really, really resonated with me on things that I feel going through my gender journey. I haven't quite landed on anything specific, but I can say this with some certainty. I don't really feel as if I'm not cisgender. I can say that with some confidence, but what exactly I am unsure. I really, really like the label of queer because it's essentially a non-answer. Because it's something different than, cisgender, but it's not well defined. And so I'm working on trying to find the exact definition that works with me, but I think queer works really well for my purposes as of now. So I usually would tell somebody that I'm a queer person. Anyway, I read this book, had a crisis, and then the news with Supreme Court decision coming out, and just put me into more of a crisis and more of a tailspin. And I'm working on it with my therapist. Anyway, it's just not been a great time right now to be a human alive on this planet who does not adhere to the gender binary, or who is not somebody who identifies as a man. And it's been really weird to encounter those feelings of, okay, I am worthless. My humanity doesn't count in the eyes of people in power. I feel like that's a privileged thing to go through, because I think a lot of people of color and other marginalized people are I'm very used to this feeling, but it's new to me, and it's just a lot to deal with. But yeah, so what is this book about? Oh my god, I feel like I just went on a ridiculous rant. But anyway, it's about the author, Eyre. I'm unsure of how to pronounce it, but the author goes through, it's just a memoir of he growing up and figuring out that he does not identify along the binary. He was born, AFAB, struggles with a lot of what puberty brings, which is massive changes to bodies that are not asked for. Anyway, I was basically sobbing at the end where he is teaching students about, comics and writing, and I was just kind of sitting there and I'm like, oh my god, that's going to be me in 2 months, in a month and a half, where I'm going to have to be sitting, granted, I won't be running workshops. I'll be with my kids for the entire, semester, or for the entire year, really. So we're gonna have opportunities to talk about gender. I really felt seen. I really felt attached, and actually, so many emotions. But I was talking to my mom and having these conversations with my mom about all the stuff that's happening internally with me and just the whole coming out process. And I use this book to help me do that. And it just makes me really happy that like books like this exist, because I wish that I had like 10,000 copies that I could give it to people to help kind of explain what I'm going through, and what a lot of people go through. And yeah, anyway, this was a really, really good book. I didn't read this exact edition. I forced my parents to buy me a copy, and the only copies that they had available were for pre-order off of Amazon, and for the hardcover. So it just arrived today, and yeah, it just is very, very exciting, and I'm definitely going to be taking this book with me on my move, and it is going to have a place either on my bookshelf in my home, or in my classroom, so that other students, or other people can have access to this book. And I just got super fucking emotional. Yay. It's fine. It is fine to cry. Okay. The next book that I read is Chasing Me to My Grave. This is by Winfred Rembert. And this again is a book that I read for the Good BookTube prize, and I cannot talk about it. And I need to stop to blow my nose, because I feel just everything coming out of my snot nozzles. Excuse me. Ugh. Okie dokie. I brought a box of tissues with me, just in case. Ugh. Okay. The next book that I managed to read is The Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation 2. This is again by MXTX. And I think this is a very strong second volume, because guess what? Shit fucking happens! A lot of stuff is happening. I wasn't expecting us to get the whole confrontation with Jing Guan Yao at the end, but we did, and I was like, oh, we're going for it. We still got a lot of books to tell, because we have 3 more books, and this is only, you know, book 2, so I'm like, okay, we did a lot in this book. You have the whole ribbon stuff that happens between Lan Zhan and Wei Ying, and Wei Ying figuring out what the fuck the ribbon means, and the shenaniganery with the chasing around of the divider thing. You also get the entirety of the Yi City arc, which I was just like, which is advertised on here. We know what's happening, but I thought it was just going to be the Yi City arc. That's going to be the big thing in this book. But no. Then we go to Koi Tower, and we have the confrontation with Jing Guan Yao, and we have the treasure room, and we have the whole backstory with Niaming Jue, and all the stuff that goes down. And so I was like, holy shit, this book covered a lot of ground. We still got a long way to go, because there's 3 more books. What? But yeah, so I mean, this is the second time I've read this. I was more prepared for going into the Yi City arc so early, because in the TV show it happens like at the end, whereas here it happens in like the second book, so it happens like in the beginning / the middle. And the first time I read it, I was not prepared. Whew! But I was a lot more prepared this time, thanks to, you know, cover designs and like the description in the back. But yeah, I'm very, very excited to get my hands on the 3rd volume, which hopefully will be coming eventually in the future. The next book I read is The Sumage Solution. This is by G.L. Guerrier, and this, I don't fully understand what a sumage is, but it's basically a person that can like take power blasts and like redirect it, and can't really do much with that power other than like dissipate it and make it like not harm people. Yeah, so I read this because it was a Storygraph recommendation, and still working through that. I got like 15 more books to read for that. Anyway, so right, yeah, so he works, the Sumage, Max, works in basically like the DMV, but for like magical people, if that makes sense. And a wolf pack wants to move into the San Andreas like valley, and he's a person who has to basically figure out like, hey, do we want these werewolves in there or not? And he meets this dude that he calls he calls Muscles, and cat's name is like actually like Biff/Brian. Biff's a nickname. Biff is like a beta werewolf. The Biff and Max fall into this like romance, unexpected romance, because werewolves are supposed to not like mages and sumages are not supposed to really like werewolves. And it's kind of weird because they both are very instantly attracted to each other, find themselves like both emotionally, physically, and sexually compatible, and they really like each other. And this book got so much more intense really fast towards the end that I wasn't expecting. But I quite liked it. It raised the stakes in a way that I wasn't necessarily expecting out of a novel like this. Am I going to continue in this series? I'm not really sure. I might. But I thought this was a really, really, really solid like standalone book where you don't necessarily need more, because I know specifically the other books are going to follow other members of the pack, and won't necessarily follow these two, and that's kind of why I'm a little bit hesitant about continuing on with this series, because I really like the two of them as a couple, and they're going to appear in the other books, they're just not going to be the focal points, and that's kind of my hesitation. But if anyone has read more of the San Andreas Shifters series, let me know, and I might pick it up. Okay. But continuing on, the next book that I read is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. What the fuck is wrong with me? That's all I can say. I've been snoozing on the Bronte sisters. Like, this is the first one that I've read, and, yes. I was just like, I get it. I was like nervous. I was like, this is a classic. I might not know if I like it. Classics have kind of been hit or miss recently. And I've revisited some classics that I liked and I was just kind of like, meh. But I really enjoyed this one. Like, towards the end, I was like screaming. I was like, oh my God, if the two of you fucking don't get together, I am going to hurt somebody. And yeah, so I really got into it. And the whole reason that I read it, other than I wanted to, and it was a Bronte, was actually because the school that I'm going to be working has some summer required reading, and it's not necessarily something that all of the kids have to read, but if you are taking certain classes, you will have to read certain books, and this was one of the English classes books that the kids had to read over the summer. So I've kind of gone on an adventure to be reading a lot of the books that my kiddos could potentially have to read, in a way of gaining a conversation. Because I know if everybody in junior year had to read Jane Eyre, I could be like, who wants to talk about it? What y'all think of Jane Eyre? Do you like it? Yes or no? You know, it's a connection point. Plus I am always looking for new good books, and I was really surprised by the amount and the diversity of books that were on this list, and I'm very, very psyched to read more. But this is just the first one and about 30 books that I'm going to be attempting to read in the upcoming year/summer. Who knows? I'm not really putting an end date on this because I think it'd just be a good thing for me to read and expose myself to different things. But anyway, Jane Eyre was the one, and I really liked it. I really liked the character of Jane Eyre and how fucking brash she was. But almost how big of a reader she was, and how big of a lover she was, and the sacrifices that she makes to protect herself, but also to protect her partner. And I really liked it. I really, really liked it. I really, really see why people love this book so much. Because it was good. That's why. And the very last book that I read for the month of June is the Gilded Ones. This is by Namina Forna. The twist about who the supposed bad guys are, like, I felt it coming. I didn't know that, like, exactly what it was, but you just had the sense of, like, I think what the government is telling these people is wrong. That they're lying to them, and I didn't quite know how, and that whole reveal and how it was, yeah, just really, really good. It's about Decca. She lives in this community that is very, very misogynistic. The entire kind of culture is very, very misogynistic. Women are definitely the properties of their, fathers and then their husbands, and they have this ritual that they go through to figure out whether or not they are pure. And to do that, they cut themselves, and or they're cut ritualistically, and if the blood is red, then they are pure. If it is gold, they are not pure, and they're an Alaki, and they are murdered. And if an Alaki survives many murders, then they're sent off to this training camp to be raised to be warriors, to fight these demons that have been attacking the country. And yeah, that's kind of the basics of it, but I really, really liked it. I think it is a great, I just thought it was a really, really good fantasy, like, stories kind of just about, like, power, and female and feminine power. And I thought that was great. Yeah, I have ordered the second one, and I will be reading it eventually. I'm thinking about all of the sequels that I have to read to series that I've started, and it makes me want to cry. It was a very, very good way to end June, given kind of everything that is happening, because that kind of, I think, brought another level to it because of the oppression that the society has specifically doled on women, and how it is tried to suppress women, and women who are different, women who don't like quite fall along into the lines, and don't kind of keep sweet or anything like that. And yeah, it felt comforting to read. Anyway, so there you go. Come here. Nah, the baby does not want to come near me. She's like, there she is. Yeah, she's just sitting on bed. She's just like, yeah, I don't want to talk to you. Well, anyway, that is all the reading that I did in June. Hopefully July is better, and hang in there, guys. Do whatever you gotta do to stay strong in dealing with the bullshittery that's happening. We'll go through this. We'll deal with this. I'm just terrified they're gonna come for my right to get married next. Fuck. There she is. Yeah, she's just sitting on bed. She's just like, yeah, I don't want to talk to you. Well, anyway, that is all the reading that I did in June. Hopefully July is better, and hang in there, guys. Do whatever you gotta do to stay strong in dealing with the bullshittery that's happening. Yeah. We'll go through this. We'll deal with this. I'm just terrified they're gonna come for my right to get married next.